Hi everybody, this will be part 6 in the character rigging tutorial series. In part 6 we're going to talk about how to add facial joints. So last video we discussed how to build the arm joints and the finger joints. And now we're going to come in and talk about adjusting and creating joints for the face. So this is all just kind of dependent on how much motion you want for the face. For this tutorial, we're just going to add some basic joints because it's the main overall body motion. So we want some major motion for the eye just to rotate, maybe some major motion for the mouth to rotate. So we're going to start there. We can come back and add more joints and edit the influences later for the areas such as eyebrows, for the eyelids, for the corners or center of the mouth. It's also really important to look at a human face or whatever character or creature's face that you can use as reference and see what actually animates and what doesn't animate. So our ears on most people don't do a whole lot of motion, don't have a whole lot of motion with them, and our nose doesn't have a whole lot of motion either. So we're not going to put joints in the ears and the nose, but we are going to create a couple of basic joints for the eyes and for the jaw to rotate. The other way that we can set up animation for the face is called using blend shapes or morph targets, and those allow the geometry to blend in and out of the default form into a new form. And we can do that for smaller subset areas such as the eyelids, the eyebrows, the nostrils, the corners and middle of the mouth, so that way we don't have to create more joints for those areas of the body. The downside is if you're going to a game engine with this is that it takes a little bit more setup and control to be able to sync up those blend shapes or morph targets into a game engine. So the easiest way to set up for a game engine is to have bone structures, joints for all of the major areas of the body that needs to animate. For the face, that means we're going to have to create more joints. We'll just create a couple of joints in the face to get started, and then we can come back and add more joints later. So I'm going to start from a side view, and we'll go find my joint tool again. So if I go to the rigging module, skeleton, and create joint, and we want to look at references of how this body part actually moves and animates. And our jaw rotates based off of a hinge joint right underneath and in front of the earlobe, the bottom of the ear. So we are going to eventually connect this up to the head joint, but the base root joint for the jaw is going to be back here somewhere. So I'm going to click and drag a joint that is right in front of the ear, and then we'll hit enter. I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate that joint and put another joint right at the base of the chin. So that way it gives me a direction to know which way my jaw is rotated no matter what angle I'm looking at from my scene. So what we can go ahead and do is parent them up. So before I parent, I want to get my rotate tool, scale out my rotate with my plus symbol, and then rotate this back or forward, but I'm going to use the z-axis. I'm going to rotate this back so the z-axis follows in length towards the end jaw joint. I don't need to actually change the end jaw joint's rotation because I'm never really going to animate that. I'm just using that as a basis to know where my jaw is pointed towards. So let's go ahead and name these. So let's say jaw, or J underscore jaw end, J underscore jaw. Okay. We really only need one jaw joint, even though we have two hinge joints, one on either side of the head underneath the ear. We really only need one joint here to rotate the entire jaw. So I'm going to select the jaw end and shift select the jaw and hit P for parent. Okay, so that way when I rotate my jaw base, it rotates the jaw end as well. The next thing we're going to do is select the jaw joint, shift select the head joint, and hit P for parent. So in my outliner, that's going to parent my jaw underneath my head. So if the head rotates, the jaw will rotate with it. So from the perspective view, this jaw joint is just going to be in the center of the head and rotate really both sides of the jaw there. All right, we'll go back to the side view and create a joint for the eye. And we're going to create one for one eye and then mirror them over. So I'm going to click over here and drag, and I don't really want to put it right in the middle of the eye because I do need to snap it properly to the center of the eye. So I'm just going to kind of put it here back some, and then let's just go ahead and rename this. We'll say jaw, or J, sorry, not jaw, J underscore, we'll do left eye. And then also from a side view, I'm going to move it up a little bit so I can get relative position there with the center of the eye. Probably needs to be moved back a little. There you go. And I'm going to hit Control D, duplicate that, and put that to the pupil, the end of the eye. We'll make an adjustment for that as well, of position later. We're going to label this one joint left eye end. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to hide my body temporarily. Control H to hide. Now what I need to do with this left eye joint is snap it to the center of my eye geometry. So basically when I rotate, I need to know the center pivot point of my eyeball. And my eye joint needs to be snapped to the center of the eyeball. So I can't see this and use the pivot point of the eyeball if it's not selected. But what I can do is turn on my rotate pivot, and that way, even with this eyeball not selected, I can see the rotate angle or the pivot point angle of this eyeball. So to do that, I'm going to select that eyeball and go to Display, Object, Transform Display, and Rotate Pivots. So Display, Transform Display, Rotate Pivots. That puts a green, if I go to wireframe mode, that puts a green circular reticle in the center of the eye, and that's exactly where that pivot point is for that eyeball. So what I'm going to do is take my left eye, I'm going to hold down left eye joint, I'll hold down the V key, which is snap to point, and click and drag that to the center pivot point of the eyeball. There we go. Alright, so that way I know that eyeball is in the center, the eye joint is in the center of the eyeball. Alright, with my end eye joint, I know I put my texture for the pupil right on the center of this vertex. So what I'm going to do is hold down the V key again and snap this eye end joint to the center of that vertex there, which is in the center of my eye. So that way both my eye and eye end joint are positioned exactly where I want them to be. Now I just need to rotate them. So with my eye joint, I want to rotate this. Let's just do the Z-axis so it follows in line to the center of the eye. And we'll do the same thing for the eye end, just so that it's all congruent and makes sense here. Okay. All right. So what I could do is mirror it over, but I want to make sure that my second eye is positioned properly. It might not be positioned exactly properly according to this one, but I'm going to instead duplicate these two joints. We'll say just duplicate, and with the move tool we'll just move them over. We'll go ahead and rename these joint right eye, and then joint right eye end, and then we will repeat the command. So with the joint right eye, we need to see the rotate pivots of this eyeball. So select the eyeball geometry, display, transform display, rotate pivots. All right, so now I can take my joint right eye, hold down the V key, and snap that over to the center of the eyeball, which is the rotate pivot of the eye. I can then take my right joint eye end, hold down the V key, and snap that to the vertex where my pupil is. I just now need to re-rotate this so that it aligns back with the eye. And then we'll rotate this one so that it aligns with the eye. There you go. All right. So now I know that eyeball and the eye joints are facing the same exact angles. Okay. So let's take our left eye end, hold down Control and click the left eye and hit P for parent. Right eye end, hold down Control and hit the right eye joint, P for parent. Then now I can select both of those left and right eye joints, and then shift select the head joint and hit P for parent. So that way if I select the head joint, that selects Also the head end and the jaw end and each eye and eye end. So that way the head will rotate both the eye joints and the jaw joint. Let's go unhide the body again. Shift H to unhide. So we have some basic eye joints in here as well. Alright, so that'll wrap up this video. The next video we'll come back and talk about helper joints.